The early 20th century, a time when industrial might, raw ingenuity, forged the very instruments of global authority. For generations, mastery of the seas dictated empires, and by 1906, a new breed of warship had emerged, forever altering the calculus of naval combat. Her name was HMS Dreadnought, and her arrival nothing short of a revolution. These majestic leviathans, born from engineering marvels, truly represented the pinnacle of human cleverness applied to conflict. Picture a gigantic floating bastion stretching hundreds of feet, displacing tens of thousands of tons of displacement. Their hulls were sheathed in multiple layers of hardened steel, expressly designed to shrug off any known projectile. The Royal Navy's Iron Duke class, for instance, boasted up to 12 inches of armor on its belt, an armor shield against contemporary artillery. But their true menace resided in their colossal armament. Dreadnoughts embraced the all-big gun concept, mounting numerous, heavy artillery pieces, typically 12-inch or even 15-inch guns capable of hurling explosive shells many miles. A single broadside from a German vessel like the SMS König could unleash a devastating torrent of high-explosive ordnance, obliterating anything in its path. This destructive capability, combined with their impervious protection, fostered the early 20th century, a time when industrial might, raw ingenuity, forged the very instruments of global authority. For generations, mastery of the seas dictated empires, and by 1906, a new breed of warship had emerged, forever altering the calculus of naval combat. Her name was HMS Dreadnought, and her arrival nothing short of a revolution. These majestic leviathans, born from engineering marvels, truly represented the pinnacle of human cleverness applied to conflict. Picture a gigantic floating bastion stretching hundreds of feet, displacing tens of thousands of tons of displacement. Their hulls were sheathed in multiple layers of hardened steel, expressly designed to shrug off any known projectile. The Royal Navy's Iron Duke class, for instance, boasted up to 12 inches of armor on its belt, an armor shield against contemporary artillery. But their true menace resided in their colossal armament. Dreadnoughts embraced the all-big gun concept, mounting numerous heavy artillery pieces, typically 12-inch or even 15-inch guns, capable of hurling explosive shells many miles. A single broadside from a German vessel like the SMS König could unleash a devastating torrent of high-explosive ordnance, obliterating anything in its path. This destructive capability, combined with their impervious protection, fostered an unwavering conviction, a certainty in their absolute invincibility. The very existence of these tremendous combatants ignited an international arms race, a furious competition where nations vied to construct ever larger, more potent examples of the type. From the United States' New York-class battleships to Imperial Japan's subsequent Fuso class, each successive design sought to outmatch its predecessors. These capital ships were more than mere weapons. They typified national prestige, a tangible projection of sovereignty and ambition across the world's oceans. They were the supreme arbiters of maritime dominion, the unchallengeable emblems of military supremacy. To command the seas was to command the world, and in this era, no other instrument of war commanded such respect, such awe, or such strategic importance. They were, without question, the apex predators of the blue water, their reign perceived as eternal. The reign of the Dreadnought was indeed perceived as eternal, a belief cemented by centuries of maritime doctrine. But even as these steel titans ruled the waves, a new, utterly improbable challenger was taking to the skies, an invention so nascent, so seemingly delicate, that few naval strategists gave it more than a passing glance. In the early 20th century, the concept of aerial combat was still largely confined to the pages of science fiction.
aircraft themselves were spindly contraptions of wood, wire, and canvas, their engines sputtering, their flights brief and perilous. Naval aviation specifically began with hesitant experiments. Pioneers like Eugene Ely performing incredible feats, like the first takeoff from a ship, the USS Birmingham, in November 1910, and the first landing on a vessel, the USS Pennsylvania, just 2 months later. These were remarkable achievements, yes, but they were seen as little more than novelties, certainly not instruments capable of altering the far-reaching realities of sea power. The early biplanes, such as the Curtiss Model D, were rudimentary machines. They typically possessed a maximum speed of perhaps 60 miles per hour, an operational ceiling of only a few thousand feet, and could carry a pilot and perhaps a handful of bombs, or a single torpedo weighing no more than 200 pounds. Compare this to a Dreadnought, a Leviathan displacing over 20,000 tons, armored with 12-inch steel plate, bristling with 12-inch guns. The disparity in scale was almost comical.
Naval high commands across the globe, from the British Admiralty to the German Kaiserliche Marine, held a deep and abiding skepticism towards these aerial curiosities. Airplanes, they theorized, might serve as reconnaissance platforms, perhaps spotting enemy fleets from afar. But their apparent vulnerability, their limited payloads, and the sheer difficulty of operating them from a moving ship in rough seas rendered them utterly ineffectual as offensive weapons. The idea that a flimsy fabric wing could threaten a fortress of steel was simply preposterous. The strategic doctrine of the era remained firmly anchored to the big gun. A ship's worth was measured by its armor thickness, its primary armament, and its ability to withstand punishment. The notion of victory achieved through speed and agility, delivered by an aerial attack, was alien to this established paradigm. Commanders were confident in their immense ships, believing their hulls were impervious to any aerial strike, that their formidable anti-aircraft weaponry, however primitive, would swat away any airborne threat long before it could inflict calamitous damage. The skies, they maintained, were not a battlefield, not for anything that truly mattered. This widespread incredulity, this dismissal of the nascent air arm, would prove to be one of the most significant miscalculations in military history. For beneath the veneer of invulnerability, unseen weaknesses lay waiting, vulnerabilities that these tiny, buzzing insects of the air would soon begin to exploit. The conventional wisdom, so entrenched and secure, was about to face a challenge it simply couldn't comprehend. The early 20th century, a period of burgeoning industrial might, saw the battleship reign supreme, embodying a nation's prestige and martial prowess. These oceanic titans, epitomized by HMS Dreadnought herself, launched in 1906, were conceived as unassailable fortresses, designed to weather any storm, any cannonade. Their tactical doctrine, honed over centuries of naval warfare, revolved around the line of battle, where these immense vessels, bristling with colossal main batteries, would engage in long-range artillery duels, delivering a crushing volume of fire from distances exceeding 10 miles. The prevailing philosophy was simple yet profound. Armor, thick and robust, combined with overwhelming offensive capability, guaranteed dominion. A ship's fighting value was directly proportional to its displacement, its plate thickness, and the bore of its principal guns. Naval strategists, steeped in this conventional wisdom, considered the idea of aerial attack largely theoretical, almost fanciful. The concept of flimsy fabric-winged biplanes carrying a single torpedo, challenging these steel behemoths, seemed to many utterly preposterous. Admiral Sir Percy Scott, a progressive figure, famously declared in 1914 that the submarine and the aeroplane have made the battleship useless. Yet his warnings were generally dismissed, viewed as the eccentric musings of an aging visionary.
The Royal Navy, alongside other major powers, continued to invest prodigious sums in their capital ship programs, convinced that the future of maritime combat lay in ever larger, ever more impregnable floating gun platforms.
But a radical, fledgling doctrine was emerging, quietly, in the hangars of nascent air forces. This audacious new approach posited that speed, low-level flight, and precise targeting could bypass the Dreadnoughts' formidable defenses. Instead of blunt force, aerial torpedo bombers like the Fairey Swordfish or the Douglas TBD Devastator would rely on stealth and the element of surprise, swooping in under radar coverage or before radar existed to release their single, potent payload at an enemy's vulnerable waterline. The objective was not to outgun, but to cripple, to rupture the hull beneath the waterline where even the stoutest belt armor offered little protection. These missions were inherently perilous, demanding immense bravery and skill from their pilots, but offered the potential for disproportionate impact, a single, well-aimed strike capable of sinking a ship costing millions and manned by thousands. This intellectual chasm, this profound disagreement on the very nature of naval supremacy, set the stage for a dramatic, bloody confrontation. It was a clash between an established, immovable force, confident in its historical dominance, and a swift, innovative challenger, betting everything on agility and the shock of the new. The ensuing engagements would unequivocally demonstrate which philosophy would prevail, forever altering the course of naval warfare and projecting air power to its undisputed zenith. The vision of air superiority, once a theoretical fancy, materialized in hangars across Britain, specifically at the Fairey Aviation Company. Here, engineers, grappling with the complex demands of naval aviation, birthed a paradox of the skies, the Fairey Swordfish. Designed in the early 1930s, this biplane, with its fabric skin and fixed landing gear, appeared a relic even upon its maiden flight in 1934. Yet, its seemingly archaic design belied a capability that would prove far-reaching in its impact on global naval strategy. Dubbed the string bag by its crews for its tangled wires and struts, this aircraft was engineered not for aerial dogfights, but for a singular destructive purpose, delivering a heavy torpedo. Its distinctive biplane wing structure, while appearing slow, actually provided an exceptional low stall speed, a critical attribute for precision landings on the pitching deck of an aircraft carrier, especially during turbulent North Atlantic patrols. This inherent stability, coupled with its robust, almost over-engineered airframe, meant the Swordfish could endure the brutal stresses of continuous catapult launches and arrested recoveries. The Swordfish's heart lay in its ability to carry a single 1,610-pound, 18-inch Mark 12 aerial torpedo, slung precariously beneath its fuselage. This enormous munition, packed with 400 pounds of TNT, represented the deep strike power needed to cripple a capital ship. Its top speed, a modest 143 miles per hour, might seem laughable compared to contemporary fighters, but for a low-altitude torpedo run, navigating through anti-aircraft fire, this deliberate pace allowed for precise targeting. The aircraft wasn't built for evasion through velocity, but through its ability to hug the wave tops, making it a difficult target for battleship gunners, whose main armaments were designed for horizontal, long-range engagements, not diving attackers from below their gun arcs. Each Swordfish carried a three-man crew, a pilot, an observer who navigated and aimed, and a radio operator rear gunner. Their collective expertise, honed through countless arduous training missions from the carriers HMS Ark Royal and HMS Illustrious, was paramount. This was not merely an aerial platform, it was a flying torpedo tube, operated by men whose bravery would be tested to the extreme in the coming conflict. The operational philosophy was clear: exploit the Leviathan's blind spots, its vulnerability below the waterline, where even inches of armor plating became irrelevant against a detonating warhead. The string bag's design, a testament to practical engineering over conventional aesthetic, represented a daring gamble against the established order of naval power. It was an embodiment of the asymmetric threat, a small, slow, yet potent weapon system designed to fell giants. These agile biplanes, appearing fragile and outmatched, were about to rewrite the rules of engagement with an effectiveness no dreadnought commander could have possibly foreseen. The early 20th century witnessed the zenith of naval engineering, manifested in the colossal dreadnought. These vessels, from Britain's HMS Dreadnought, 1906, which lent its moniker to an entire class, to the enormous super-dreadnoughts that followed, embodied a singular philosophy: overwhelming power and impregnable protection. Marine designers across the globe, from Kiel to Philadelphia, poured their ingenuity into creating these floating titans, crafting what many believed were truly unsinkable fortresses of the seas. Their very presence projected national might, a tangible symbol of imperial aspiration. At the core of their formidable resilience lay an intricate, multi-layered defensive scheme. The battleship's hull was typically girded by a massive central armor belt, crafted from hardened Krupp steel, often tapering in thickness from a staggering 300 to 350 millimeters at the waterline, where vital machinery and magazines resided, down to lesser but still considerable depths below. This fundamental barrier was complemented by interior bulkheads, armored decks designed to deflect plunging shell fire, and complex splinter protection systems, all meticulously arranged to absorb and dissipate the kinetic energy of the largest maritime ordnance. Beyond the sheer density of their external hide, these leviathans boasted sophisticated internal compartmentalization, a honeycomb of watertight subdivisions engineered to manage catastrophic damage. Numerous transverse and longitudinal bulkheads divided the ship's interior into dozens, sometimes hundreds of isolated compartments. The idea was simple, yet profoundly complex in execution. Even if several sections were breached by torpedoes or shells, the integrity of the remaining structure would confine the flooding, allowing the vessel to maintain buoyancy and combat readiness. Redundant pumping systems and dedicated damage control teams trained rigorously for such grim eventualities, reinforcing the perception of invincibility. Their offensive punch was equally awe-inspiring. The defining characteristic of a dreadnought was its all-big gun armament, typically 10 or more heavy-caliber cannons, often ranging from 12-inch 305 mm to a gargantuan 16-inch 406 mm bore. These enormous weapons, mounted in heavily armored turrets, possessed the ability to hurl shells weighing over a ton for distances exceeding 20,000 yards, capable of piercing battleship-grade armor with terrifying efficacy. Secondary batteries, arrayed along the superstructure, provided closer-range defense against smaller craft, but the true destructive capability resided in those principal guns. This grand design was not merely a feat of engineering, it was an article of faith. For admirals and strategists of the era, the capital ship was the ultimate arbiter of maritime dominion. The prevailing wisdom dictated that only another battleship, similarly armed and armored, could possibly deliver a decisive fatal blow to one of these behemoths. The very notion that a flimsy fabric and wood aircraft, barely capable of carrying a single torpedo, could pose a credible threat to such a monument of steel and sea power was utterly unthinkable, an absurd fantasy dismissed by nearly every established authority. Their conviction remained unshaken, a profound belief that would soon be tested, then irrevocably shattered. Yet, even as naval authorities clung to their long-held doctrines, the nascent reality of air power began to assert itself, presenting an undeniable challenge. A few perceptive minds, observing the rapid advancement of aviation, discerned a brewing storm on the horizon, a direct threat to the established order of men. Yet, even as naval authorities clung to their long-held doctrines, the nascent reality of air power began to assert itself, presenting an undeniable challenge. A few perceptive minds, observing the rapid advancement of aviation, discerned a brewing storm on the horizon, a direct threat to the established order of maritime dominance. This emerging capability, once relegated to theoretical exercises, received its first genuine battlefield validation in the early days of the Second World War. The night of November 11, 1940, saw this dramatic shift commence. From the decks of HMS Illustrious, a force of 21 Fairey Swordfish biplanes, aircraft derided by many as antiquated string bags, ascended into the Mediterranean sky. Their mission, conceived by Admiral Andrew Cunningham, was audacious: to cripple the Italian Regia Marina's battle fleet, then resting securely within its home port of Taranto. Under the cover of darkness and aided by flares, these slow, fabric-covered aircraft unleashed their payload. The results were immediate and shocking. The battleship Conte di Cavour was struck by a single torpedo, settling quickly into the shallow seabed. Littorio, a powerful new vessel, absorbed 3 torpedoes, sustaining considerable structural harm. Duilio also took a damaging blow. The Italian fleet, caught completely unprepared, saw 3 of its 6 battleships disabled in a mere 90-minute engagement. This dramatic victory, they insisted, was not repeatable, certainly not against powerful capital ships operating in the expansive, unpredictable open ocean. The deep-rooted conviction in battleship supremacy, therefore, remained largely intact, a shield against innovation. Taranto was acknowledged, yes, but its far-reaching consequences for naval doctrine were largely ignored, relegated to the margins of strategic planning. The elegant, slow biplanes had indeed delivered a crippling blow, yet the world's navies were not yet ready to accept that the era of the armored behemoth was drawing to a close. That realization, a truly significant shift in strategic thought, would require even more spectacular and more permanent demonstrations of aerial power, soon to arrive with devastating finality. In May of 1941, a singular vessel, a Teutonic titan of the seas, slipped into the frigid North Atlantic. Its name, a sound that would send shivers through Allied command, was Bismarck. Launched in 1939, this Leviathan represented the zenith of capital ship engineering, a warship designed for brute force and unfathomable endurance. Weighing over 42,000 tons, the Bismarck boasted 8 15-inch guns capable of hurling armor-piercing shells a staggering 22 miles, a truly formidable arsenal. Her protective plate measured up to 320 millimeters thick, rendering her, in the eyes of many, an impervious fortress, practically unsinkable. The German Kriegsmarine harbored immense pride in this new fighting machine, envisioning it as a commerce raider that would wreak catastrophic havoc upon Allied convoy routes, severing Britain's vital maritime lifelines. Its operational deployment, coded Rhein-Übung, was not merely a military endeavor, but a profound statement of German naval aspiration, a challenge to the Royal Navy's long-standing dominance. The subsequent pursuit, a desperate scramble across the vast ocean, would become one of the most enthralling and consequential naval manhunts in history, involving an astonishing array of surface units.
The British response was immediate, an almost primal reaction to the emergence of such a potent enemy asset. Churchill himself issued the direct order: sink the Bismarck. A colossal armada comprising battleships, battle cruisers, aircraft carriers, and destroyers was dispatched with unparalleled urgency to intercept the German behemoth. From the venerable HMS Hood and HMS Prince of Wales to the carrier HMS Ark Royal and the swift HMS King George V, virtually every available major warship was committed to this singular overriding objective. This immense mobilization underscored the gravity of the threat posed by the German dreadnought, signifying a moment of intense global peril. For the Admiralty, allowing the Bismarck to escape into the expanse of the Atlantic to prey on merchant shipping was an unthinkable proposition, a potential strategic disaster that could cripple the Allied war effort. The German vessel, magnificent in its construction, encapsulated the prevailing naval philosophy of the era. Sheer size, overwhelming gunpowder, and heavy defensive plating were considered the ultimate arbiters of sea combat. Yet, beneath this seemingly impregnable exterior lay the inherent vulnerability of any singular high-value asset. A colossal target, detectable and, crucially, slow to react to an entirely different kind of peril. This epic confrontation would not only test the limits of traditional maritime warfare, but also inadvertently set the stage for a dramatic re-evaluation of naval strategy, proving that even the most formidable symbol of established might could possess a fatal flaw. The stage was set for the ultimate test of air versus sea.
By late May of 1941, the German battleship Bismarck represented the apex of naval engineering. A Leviathan, almost 250 meters long, armed with 8 38-centimeter guns, it had already sunk HMS Hood and was now, pursued by the Royal Navy, racing for the safety of French forts. Its formidable armor seemed impenetrable. But lying in wait on the deck of HMS Ark Royal was a squadron of aircraft that appeared almost anachronistic. The Fairey Swordfish biplanes, quaint, fabric-covered machines from another era. These string bags, as they were affectionately known, had a top speed of barely 100 knots. They were slow, seemingly vulnerable, yet this very characteristic was their strength. Their biplane design, with its extensive wing area, offered exceptional low-speed stability, a crucial advantage for precise torpedo drops. Against the Bismarck's massive bulk, these daring pilots, often flying in conditions so treacherous that modern aircraft would be grounded, had to descend to mere dozens of feet above the churning waves, navigating a maelstrom of anti-aircraft fire. On May 26th, through squalls and a gathering dusk, 15 Swordfish launched into the North Atlantic tempest. Each plane carried a single, crucial torpedo. Their mission was clear, yet fraught with immense peril: cripple the German battleship. As they approached the Bismarck, its defensive barrage erupted, a spectacular yet terrifying wall of flak and tracer rounds. The pilots, many barely out of training, pressed on, their antiquated aircraft buffeted by the concussions, their eyes fixed on the immense gray hull below. In the fading light, amidst the chaos, the Swordfish executed their attack runs. Flying at a snail's pace relative to the target, they threaded their way through the blistering hail of shells. At such low altitudes and speeds, their torpedoes could be released with accuracy that faster aircraft simply couldn't achieve. One torpedo, launched by Lieutenant Commander John Moffett and his crew, struck home, impacting near the Bismarck's stern. This was no ordinary hit, no minor damage. It jammed the battleship's twin rudders, solid, locking them hard to port. A single, well-placed weapon, delivered by an unassuming biplane, had dealt a wound of deep significance. The Bismarck, once a symbol of German naval power, now found itself turning in helpless circles in the vast expanse of the ocean, its steering gear irrevocably damaged. Its speed, its armor, its immense firepower, all rendered irrelevant by one small torpedo strike. This unexpected vulnerability transformed the hunter into the hunted, a sitting duck for the converging British capital ships. The subsequent day, May 27th, saw the Bismarck succumb to an overwhelming assault from HMS Rodney and HMS King George V. While the Swordfish's success was undeniable, it was also, in part, a testament to sheer luck and extraordinary human courage against overwhelming odds. The biplanes themselves were incredibly vulnerable, their unarmored fuselages and slow speed making them easy targets. Many crews, though successful, risked their lives with every flight into such intense anti-aircraft fire. The mission highlighted not just the potential of air power, but also the extreme sacrifice demanded from those who pioneered its tactical applications in the harshest of conditions. The Bismarck's demise, directly attributable to that one torpedo, proved a definitive turning point.
It wasn't the brute force of other battleships that sealed its fate, but the agility and precision of a seemingly obsolete aircraft. This engagement offered compelling evidence that the future of naval warfare had truly taken flight. Yet, the conventional wisdom of naval power was about to confront a baffling paradox, a contest where vulnerability, ironically, became a strength. On May 26, 1941, as the German battleship Bismarck surged through the Atlantic, a flight of humble Fairey Swordfish biplanes prepared for an assault that would defy every expectation. These seemingly archaic aircraft, with their canvas skins and open cockpits, moved at a lethargic cruising velocity of just over 100 miles per hour, a pace that should have made them effortless prey for the Bismarck's formidable anti-aircraft batteries.
But this lack of rapid motion, a perceived weakness, became their shield. The advanced flak systems aboard the German behemoth, designed for the faster, higher-flying monoplanes of the era, struggled to track these ponderous attackers. Their fire control computations, calibrated for jets darting across the sky, often overshot the lumbering biplanes as they skimmed the wave crests. The Swordfish's modest structural integrity, composed largely of wood and fabric, allowed ordnance to pass clean through, causing less catastrophic damage than if it had struck metallic airframes. Furthermore, their incredible nimbleness at low altitude was a vital asset. A Swordfish could execute tight turns, banking sharply to evade bursts of defensive fire, a maneuverability largely impossible for more rigid, higher-performance aircraft. This inherent pliability, combined with the wretched weather conditions, blinding rain and dense cloud cover, offered a cloak of concealment, enabling the 15 aircraft of 825 Naval Air Squadron, launched from HMS Ark Royal, to approach the German Dreadnought largely unmolested. The element of suddenness, that split second before the Bismarck's crew could react fully, proved absolutely essential. However, the ultimate success of this desperate offensive rested on the remarkable courage and professional proficiency of the British air crews. Flying into a maelstrom of steel and flame, they pressed their attack with unwavering resolve, knowing a direct hit meant certain demise. Lieutenant Commander John Moffett, piloting one of the Swordfish, executed a daring approach, dropping his torpedo at close range. It was this precise placement, a testament to sheer nerve and adeptness, that jammed the Bismarck's rudder, rendering the colossal warship unsteerable. This singular strike delivered an incomprehensible economic advantage. To construct the Bismarck had required years of immense industrial effort, vast material resources, and hundreds of millions of Reichsmarks. The Swordfish, by contrast, were relatively inexpensive machines, manufactured quickly and in large numbers. The expenditure of a mere handful of these primitive biplanes to cripple and ultimately seal the doom of one of the most sophisticated naval vessels ever built represented a staggering disparity in resource allocation, an undeniable demonstration of strategic foresight over brute force. Yet, it is crucial to acknowledge the immense peril involved. Many such missions ended in tragedy, with brave airmen lost to the overwhelming might of naval defenses. The Swordfish, for all its unexpected triumphs, was a relic, its operational ceiling and speed limitations making it highly susceptible in other, less fortunate engagements. This particular victory against the German flagship, while profound, hinged on a confluence of specific factors: adverse weather, the technical miscalculation of anti-aircraft systems, and extraordinary human bravery. Ultimately, the decisive actions of these biplane aviators proved that ingenuity, coupled with audacious execution, could overcome seemingly insurmountable technological disadvantages. It was a potent, indelible lesson that forever altered the trajectory of naval strategy. The demise of the Bismarck, a titan of steel and fire, vanquished by a handful of biplanes, reverberated with a deep shock throughout every naval headquarters on the planet. For generations, naval doctrine had fixated on the battleship, its immense guns, its impregnable armor, as the ultimate expression of maritime might.
The idea that such a costly, technologically advanced vessel could be crippled and then sunk by slow, fabric-covered aircraft seemed an affront to logic, an almost unbelievable reversal of expectations.
Admiralties in Washington, London, and Tokyo grappled with the implications. The sinking wasn't merely a loss of a single ship. It represented a far-reaching reevaluation of naval strategy itself. The very foundation of sea power, built upon tonnage and cannon caliber, was exposed as vulnerable. This single event, unfolding in the frigid Atlantic in May 1941, signaled a definitive shift, an acknowledgement that the aircraft carrier, once seen as a support vessel, would emerge as the undisputed monarch of the oceans. The paradox was galling for many traditionalists. The Fairey Swordfish, a design originating from the 1930s, possessed a top speed barely exceeding 100 knots, making it, in theory, an easy target for modern anti-aircraft batteries. Yet, its inherent agility, its ability to fly slowly and at wave-top height, combined with its robust construction, allowed it to deliver its lethal payload. The Bismarck's advanced fire control, designed to track swift monoplanes, struggled to acquire these lumbering targets, highlighting a critical flaw in contemporary defense planning. Despite this undeniable evidence, the transition was not immediate or universally accepted. Many nations, including the United States and Imperial Japan, continued to invest enormous resources into constructing new, even larger battleships, such as the Iowa-class and the Yamato-class, respectively. These Leviathans would still engage in surface actions and provide shore bombardment, their existence alone a formidable deterrent. The sheer psychological power of these dreadnoughts, a symbol of national strength, was difficult to abandon overnight. Yet, their operational roles were increasingly defined by the presence, or absence, of aerial protection. Ultimately, the Bismarck episode provided empirical proof. The aerial torpedo, delivered by seemingly archaic aircraft, had delivered a fatal blow to the battleship's undisputed reign. It was a potent, indelible lesson that cemented the carrier's future, forever altering the trajectory of naval strategy, forcing a new appreciation for speed, agility, and aerial supremacy over brute force and heavy armor. The illusion of invulnerability, once held by the mightiest warships, had been shattered. The age of the Leviathan, the armored behemoth that once ruled the waves, was over, irrevocably. The agile biplane, once a seemingly insignificant airborne curiosity, had delivered an unparalleled blow to naval philosophy, forcing a deep reevaluation of maritime might. This was not merely an adjustment, but a far-reaching paradigm shift, altering the very bedrock of naval strategy. For centuries, sea power had been defined by size, gun caliber, and impenetrable armor plating. The Dreadnought, with its colossal 15-inch guns and thick steel hide, embodied this doctrine of absorbing punishment while delivering a devastating counterpunch. A battleship-class vessel like the HMS Queen Elizabeth, displacing over 30,000 tons, was considered an unsinkable fortress, its range limited only by the curvature of the Earth and the effective distance of its shell trajectory, perhaps 20 miles. Yet, the biplane, initially seen as a mere scouting tool, introduced a different, more nuanced calculus: speed, extended range, and the precise delivery of ordnance from an aerial platform. The fragile-looking Fairey Swordfish, slow by modern standards, could project its torpedoes hundreds of miles from its launching point, reaching targets far beyond the visual horizon and the reach of any dreadnought's artillery. This new reality championed the concept of not being hit over absorbing hits, valuing evasion and preemptive strike capability above all else. The illusion of invulnerability, once held by the mightiest warships, had been shattered. The age of the Leviathan, the armored behemoth that once ruled the waves, was over, irrevocably.
The agile biplane, once a seemingly insignificant airborne curiosity, had delivered an unparalleled blow to naval philosophy, forcing a deep re-evaluation of maritime might. This was not merely an adjustment, but a far-reaching paradigm shift, altering the very bedrock of naval strategy. For centuries, sea power had been defined by size, gun caliber, and impenetrable armor plating. The Dreadnought, with its colossal 15-inch guns and thick steel hide, embodied this doctrine of absorbing punishment while delivering a devastating counterpunch. A battleship-class vessel like the HMS Queen Elizabeth, displacing over 30,000 tons, was considered an unsinkable fortress, its range limited only by the curvature of the Earth and the effective distance of its shell trajectory, perhaps 20 miles. Yet, the biplane, initially seen as a mere scouting tool, introduced a different, more nuanced calculus: speed, extended range, and the precise delivery of ordnance from an aerial platform. The fragile-looking Fairey Swordfish, slow by modern standards, could project its torpedoes hundreds of miles from its launching point, reaching targets far beyond the visual horizon and the reach of any Dreadnought's artillery. This new reality championed the concept of not being hit over absorbing hits, valuing evasion and preemptive strike capability above all else.
The aircraft carrier, therefore, ascended to the throne of the seas, replacing the battleship as the new queen. This innovative floating airfield, capable of launching and recovering squadrons of torpedo planes and dive bombers, became the true arbiter of oceanic dominance. Vessels like the USS Langley, America's first carrier, initially carried just 34 aircraft. But even this modest complement offered an operational reach and tactical flexibility no gun-armed capital ship could match. The vulnerability of a carrier lay not in direct confrontation with heavy guns, but in its ability to project a shield of aircraft, striking first and decisively. Of course, this change was not without its detractors. Many seasoned admirals, steeped in centuries of naval tradition, found it challenging to fully grasp the implications of this aerial threat. They dismissed the vulnerability of their beloved battleships, clinging to the belief that sheer mass and firepower would always prevail. The transition was often slow, met with considerable skepticism, and sometimes only embraced after experiencing the harsh lessons of combat firsthand, where the cost in lives and material was high. Ultimately, the biplane's triumphs heralded a future where naval engagement would be fought across vast expanses of ocean, decided by the speed of aircraft, the skill of pilots, and the reach of airborne weapons. The very definition of a Navy's potency had been redefined, moving from a static measure of tonnage and armor to a dynamic assessment of offensive projection and tactical agility. This marked an extreme divergence from established thought, setting the course for all future conflicts on the world's waterways. The thunderous silence that followed the explosions at Toronto and the subsequent devastating strikes at Pearl Harbor marked far more than the loss of specific capital ships. It represented the dramatic, irrevocable collapse of an entire naval strategic paradigm, one built upon the unshakable might of heavily armored dreadnoughts. The early biplane, with its fragile structure and modest payload, had delivered a fundamental, undeniable truth: that agility, precision, and the third dimension of aerial assault could decisively overcome brute force and impenetrable plating. This revelation, born from rudimentary aircraft and daring pilots, didn't just alter wartime tactics. It redefined the very architecture of maritime supremacy for a century to come. The lineage from those fabric-winged biplanes to today's formidable naval forces is unmistakably clear. The aircraft carrier, a mobile airbase capable of projecting immense air power thousands of miles from shore, emerged as the paramount instrument of sea control, directly a consequence of early aviators proving the viability of ship-launched aerial strikes. Modern supercarriers, like the Nimitz and Ford-class vessels, displacing over 100,000 tons and carrying 75 advanced jet aircraft, are the ultimate descendants of that pioneering vision, embodying the fusion of air and sea capability.
Their existence, their purpose, flows directly from the vulnerability of battleships revealed by those humble, intrepid aircraft. Beyond manned flight, the principle of delivering concentrated destruction from a standoff distance, first demonstrated by torpedo planes, evolved into the sophisticated guided missile. Today, anti-ship missiles, traveling at supersonic speeds and equipped with advanced targeting systems, represent the contemporary incarnation of the biplane's disruptive potential. A single, relatively inexpensive missile, such as the Norwegian-developed Naval Strike Missile or China's YJ-12, can inflict catastrophic damage upon a multi-billion-dollar warship, echoing the disproportional impact achieved by a single swordfish against a mighty Italian battleship. The emphasis has shifted from absorbing punishment to avoiding it entirely, prioritizing detection, evasion, and the overwhelming first strike.
Yet this relentless pursuit of innovative offensive systems has spurred an equally intricate web of defensive measures. The age of unchallenged aerial or missile assault has passed. Modern naval vessels are equipped with layered defenses, electronic warfare suites, close-in weapon systems like the Phalanx CIWS capable of firing 4,500 rounds per minute, and sophisticated surface-to-air missile batteries such as the Aegis system. This perpetual arms race, where every offensive leap invites a corresponding defensive countermeasure, illustrates the enduring, complex interplay between striking capability and protective solutions, a dynamic that remains as vibrant and critical today as it was when biplanes first challenged dreadnoughts. Ultimately, the saga of agile biplanes shattering the illusion of dreadnought invincibility serves as a timeless testament that adaptability, cleverness, and a willingness to embrace truly novel solutions will always redefine the landscape of military competition. The core lesson remains: no platform, no matter how grand or seemingly impervious, is immune to obsolescence if a more nimble, creatively applied countermeasure emerges. The contemporary maritime environment, dominated by stealth aircraft, hypersonic projectiles, and autonomous underwater vehicles, continues to be shaped by this fundamental truth, a profound legacy bequeathed by those daring biplane pilots who first looked down upon the ocean's behemoths and saw not insurmountable obstacles, but vulnerable targets.
Their courage, their machines, forged the path for the future of global sea power.